going to bring our break even way up, and I mean way up. So our break even right now would be 980,000 kilometers driven or 609,000 miles driven to make up that initial $4,900. What is going on today, guys? My name's Alex. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are doing another comparison video. We're going to be talking about whether or not the EcoDiesel in the Ram 1500 is worth the extra money versus just buying the 5.7 Hemi. So last week I did a comparison on the 6.4 Hemi versus the 6.7 Cummins, whether or not the Cummins in the long run, despite being $12,000 right from the beginning, was still a better bang for the buck. Turned out with the price of diesel, the high price of diesel, it was not the case. The 6.4 Hemi was the best bang for the buck at this point in time. Now today, like I mentioned, we are going to do the exact same thing with the 3-liter V6 EcoDiesel versus the notorious 5.7 Hemi. So right off the bat, where I live locally, an EcoDiesel is going to cost $3,900 more than the Hemi option. Now, like the Cummins, we have to factor in the tax, 13% sales tax around here, so that's going to be an extra $500, making us a total of $4,400. Now, if you were to put 10% down on your truck and you had to finance the rest, and you finance at 5% for 5 years, that would give you an extra $500. So that's going to bring us a total of $4,900. Now, just a little side note on price of an EcoDiesel. So I didn't know this until I did some research for this video, actually. There are only specific trim levels that you can actually get the EcoDiesel as an engine option, and those are higher level trims. So the cheapest trim level you can get an EcoDiesel in a Ram 1500 is a Ram Rebel. That comes in at just about $64,000. Now, once you add PDI and delivery costs, that's going to come to $66,000. And then you add in the actual cost of the engine, that's going to bring you right about to $70,000. Now, we're not done here because, well, we need to put tax on top of that. It's going to come to $79,000 as the cheapest configuration of truck you can actually get the EcoDiesel engine in, which is a little bit crazy. Now, I figured firstly we'd take the actual EPA rated combined MPG for this equation, and at the end of the video I will actually input my personal experience with the 5.7 and the EcoDiesel, doing a little loop, so stay tuned for that. But for now we'll use the actual EPA rated combined fuel economy. So your EcoDiesel is 26 miles per gallon, the Hemi is 17 miles per gallon, for a total of 47%. So the EcoDiesel is 47% more fuel efficient than the Hemi. Now, what we also have to take into consideration is the price of fuel. So right now, to me locally, diesel is $2.01 a liter and gas is $1.55 a liter. So as of right now, diesel is roughly 30% more expensive than gasoline, meaning that our EcoDiesel is no longer going to be 47% more fuel efficient. It's going to only be 17% more fuel efficient. Now, once again, I'm going to apologize to my American viewers because we are going to break this down in metric because it is just easier for me. So the EcoDiesel is going to be 18 cents per kilometer versus the Hemi, which is going to be at 21 cents per kilometer when we combine fuel economy as well as the actual price of fuel. So that gives us a difference of 3 cents per kilometer. So as it sits right now, the EcoDiesel has a 3 cent per kilometer price advantage over the Hemi. Now, what we can do is we can do some math here and figure out how many kilometers we need to drive in order to make up that initial cost of purchase of the EcoDiesel. And we would need to drive 163,000 kilometers or 101,000 miles in order to break even with the initial cost of purchase. And quite frankly, that is really not the worst mileage. I feel like the EcoDiesel would most likely get there pretty easily. So at this point in time, it does seem like it is advantageous to spend that money and get the EcoDiesel. However, we are not taking a couple things into consideration. Number one is maintenance costs. So let's break that down. So first off, I did find it weird that Ram recommends both the EcoDiesel and the Hemi to change their oil relatively at the same time. They recommend that both engines should change their oil no later than 10,000 miles or 16,000 kilometers. Now, the EcoDiesel does take more oil. It takes 9 quarts of oil, and in theory, it should take longer for that oil to go bad because there's more of it. Likewise, with the Cummins, that takes a lot more oil than the, let's say, 6.4 Hemi, and the Cummins oil change interval is 24,000 kilometers. Now, to keep it simple, we're just going to use Mopar filters for both the EcoDiesel and the Hemi. So for the EcoDiesel, you need 1 fuel filter, 1 oil filter. That's going to come to $256. Now for oil, I went with Rotella T6 full synthetic, and that's going to bring us to $130 of oil, 2 jugs, bringing us to a grand total of $386 for a scheduled maintenance on an EcoDiesel engine using Mopar filters. Now the Hemi, it's a little cheaper. You just need 1 oil filter. The Mopar filter was $16.75. We also used Mobile One full synthetic oil. That came to $126 for 2 jugs, and that came to a grand total of $143. Now converting that to cost per kilometer, we can see that Hemi maintenance is going to cost 0.9 cents per kilometer, where the EcoDiesel is going to cost 2.4 cents per kilometer. So a little bit of difference. Now, if we tie in our cost of maintenance into our total price advantage per kilometer of the EcoDiesel, so we're only going to have a 1.5 cent per kilometer price advantage over the Hemi at this point. And that's going to bring our break-even kilometers up, meaning that we're going to need to drive 327,000 kilometers or 203,000 miles in order to break even with our actual cost. Now, again, we are missing something pretty important here, and that is going to be the emission systems or the after treatment. First of all, we have to include the price of DEF. For most pickup trucks, it's going to be right around half a cent per kilometer. Now the other portion of that is after treatment repairs and maintenance. Like I mentioned in the Cummins video, you are going to be repairing your after treatment system. Sensors, parts, they seem to just fail in these things, and they cost a lot of money, and it's a lot of money to diagnose it because you need special software, and you're going to be going to the dealer to pay their expensive rates. So I'm going to be very conservative and say that it is going to be half a cent per kilometer. But what this is going to do is going to bring our price advantage to only half a cent per kilometer. Now with our final price advantage of half a cent per kilometer over the Hemi, it's going to bring our break even way up, and I mean way up. So our break even right now would be 980,000 kilometers driven or 609,000 miles driven to make up that initial $4,900. So at this point, obviously, guys, it doesn't really matter how much we factor in DEF or really after treatment system, because that mileage is just so high, it doesn't really matter. And I think we've come to the conclusion that at this price of diesel today, it really does not make sense to buy the EcoDiesel, whereas last week with the Cummins, and like I said, I failed to mention this, I think, when you pay the extra money for the Cummins or the luxury to own a Cummins, you are paying for a much better, stronger, longer lasting engine that can tow basically twice as much as the gas option. Whereas with this engine, the EcoDiesel, it can't tow as much as the Hemi. It's not as strong as the Hemi in my opinion. The really only advantage of the EcoDiesel is that it is more fuel efficient. And if we do the math here, over the long run of the truck and the engine, it's really not going to save you any money at this price point with diesel. So as it looks today, it seems like the 5.7 Hemi is the better option. Now, based upon our calculations, we can even play with the numbers. So, in my opinion, I would say most Ram 1500s of the 4th gen and 5th gen are probably going to make it to right around 300,000 kilometers or, just under 200,000 miles on average. So with that mileage, that's going to be roughly 31% of your break-even mileage. meaning that over the lifetime of the truck, you are going to pay an extra $3,300 for the EcoDiesel if you... Meaning that you're going to pay $3,300 over the lifetime of the truck more for the EcoDiesel. Fuck. So we can even play with the numbers here. My opinion is that the average Ram 1500 from the 4th gen or 5th gen trucks are probably going to last right around 300,000 kilometers or just under 200,000 miles. Now, with that mileage, and based upon our calculations of our break even, that would mean that you are going to pay $3,300 more for buying the EcoDiesel than if you would have just bought the Hemi. Now, we can go even more into that. So if your truck only lasted to 200,000 kilometers or 120,000 miles, you're going to be paying an extra $4,000 for the EcoDiesel versus if you just went with the Hemi. And we can go up. So if your truck runs 400,000 kilometers or 250,000 miles, you are still going to be paying $2,900 more for the EcoDiesel than if you would have bought the Hemi. Now, yes, this does greatly rely on the price of diesel, but I think the high prices of diesel are going to stay for a little while here, you know, anywhere from 25 to 30% more than gas. I think the refining process of diesel has gone up significantly. Some people were talking in my last video how the refining process with the ultra low sulfur has made it much more expensive, and I can believe that. The other thing I also believe is that I think, you know, especially here in North America, I think our government likes to penalize diesel because in their eyes it's seen as unclean. And as our fearless leader Justin Trudeau said himself, polluters need to pay. All right, well now I'll give you my personal opinion on the EcoDiesel as a diesel mechanic. And to be honest, I just don't think it's a very good engine. In fact, I think it's kind of garbage. Even if it came out to be much cheaper than the Hemi, I think I still probably wouldn't even think about buying it. Originally, the EcoDiesel was a marine application engine in like the early 2000s, and it was designed for steady RPM use, and it was not designed to have an emission system on it. So the fact that it has a emission system, an EGR just shoving soot back into it, and now it's in a pickup truck, not on a boat, I think that has a lot to do with why these engines are failing. I think people always kind of equate diesel engines with being strong and long lasting, and, you know, running 1,000,000 miles, but this diesel, this 3-liter V6 is a very light spec diesel, and in fact I would much rather be towing with the 5.7 Hemi versus this thing, because it is a light duty diesel engine. Yes, it can save you money at the pumps in comparison to the Hemi, but like we've established right now with the price of diesel, you're really not saving any money. In fact, you're probably losing money. The EcoDiesel also has major bottom end issues, mainly by the EGR pumping soot into the engine and getting the oil all sooty. You clog the bottom end galleries, and so it can't feed oil into the crank bearings. And yeah, basically you get a bottom end failure, which is an engine replacement. The other issue mechanically is that the fuel pump is driven off the cam gear, which is just very strange, very light duty. So what I've heard happening is when the engine's under load and that fuel pump is under a lot of load, it actually strips the cam gear, and once the cam gear is stripped, well, your timing's gone, and a piston is going to eat a valve, and again, usually the engine is junk after that. The last major issue I see with these EcoDiesels is just the way that they're kind of advertised. So in my opinion, it seems like these trucks are advertised for people who want trucks in the city with good fuel mileage, and quite frankly, a modern diesel is the last thing you want to own if you're driving in the city. These trucks like to be run hot, especially the after treatment system. If you don't get that thing hot enough, you're just gonna have nothing but problems, nothing but check engine lights, because you're always gonna have soot in those DPF filters, and it's just not going to be a happy thing. And as of today, I just literally found out that the EcoDiesel will be discontinued after 2023 because, well, it's probably crap to begin with. And I think Ram's claiming that it's because they have the EV Ram coming out in 2024, but I think Ram could not wait to get rid of the EcoDiesel because I think they just had so many problems with it, and they kind of just gave up on it, which I can't blame them. Now, for those of you who are still watching, I do have some cool footage of my old Ram 1500 with the Hemi and my buddy's Ram 1500 with the EcoDiesel, both 2017. So they are 4th generation trucks, not 5th gens, but I think the numbers are interesting because they are the exact same engines as what we were dealing with. So I ran I think it was like a 40-kilometer highway loop with both these trucks, and I got 19.6 miles per gallon with my Hemi, and I got 25.3 miles per gallon with the EcoDiesel. Now what's interesting here, if we remember, the combined EPA rating of the EcoDiesel was 26 miles per gallon. So I got less than the combined MPG on the highway. This should be much higher, and I think they overrate the EcoDiesel to begin with. But anyways, the Hemi, if we remember, the combined was 17 miles per gallon. I believe the highway was 21, so we're a little bit below the highway, but at least we're above the combined MPG. So what this is going to do, this is going to bring our mileage much closer together. Now the difference between these two mileages is 30%. So the EcoDiesel on the real world test was 30% more efficient than the Hemi. Not that bad, right? But we got to factor in the price of diesel. And if you guys remember from earlier in the video, the price of diesel here was 30% cheaper. So what is that going to do? That is just simply going to X out our cost advantage for the EcoDiesel. So in theory, the EcoDiesel in the real world, with this real world test I did, was just as efficient as the Hemi when we factor in the price of diesel there. So in the real world, at least on the highway anyways, the EcoDiesel has zero fuel economy advantage over the Hemi, which is kind of crazy to think about, but it's true. So I'm not even going to go through the rest of the numbers because right here, we know the Hemi's going to come out on top clearly. And yeah, so there you go, guys. It looks like the EcoDiesel is really not the right option at this point in time. Anyways, guys, I hope you liked the video. For those of you who have stuck around to the end here, if you did, don't forget to leave that thumbs up. And if you like cool stuff like this, don't forget to subscribe. We'd love to have you guys on board. As always, if you guys have any opinions, feel free to let me know what I've done wrong, what you think. If you like your EcoDiesel or if you hate it like I do, I'm interested to know what you guys think. But anyways, enough of me. See you in the next freaking video.